Hey everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Smile. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to talk about something incredibly important, something many of us face in silence. You know, we all wear masks sometimes, don't we? We all have these private battles, these storms brewing inside that no one else ever sees. Can you relate to that? Have you ever put on a brave face when you felt like you were crumbling inside? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences. Today, we're diving into a story about one of those battles, a journey through the quiet, suffocating storm of depression, and more importantly, the unwavering light that can be found on the other side. This is Alex's story, but as you listen, I want you to consider how much of it might echo in your own life or in the lives of people you care about. For years, Alex carried an invisible weight, and I mean truly invisible. This wasn't a burden you could point to, no physical cast or obvious wound. It was something far more insidious, something that pressed down on every single part of their existence. It wasn't just sadness, not the kind you feel after a bad day or a disappointment. This was a profound, bone-deep sense of nothingness, mixed with an overwhelming fatigue that transcended mere tiredness. It was like living underwater, every movement an immense struggle, every sound muffled. Have you ever felt that kind of weight? That sense of nothingness, even when you logically know you have a lot to be grateful for? It's a strange paradox, isn't it? To feel so much and yet so empty all at once. For Alex, the mornings were always the absolute hardest, and if you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The simple, non-negotiable act of getting out of bed felt like trying to scale Mount Everest every single day. Every muscle, every fiber of their being just screamed for rest that never truly came, even after hours of troubled, fitful sleep. There was this constant internal negotiation. Just 10 more minutes. Just wait until the light changes. Maybe if I just stay perfectly still, the day won't actually start. And then, inevitably, the crushing wave of guilt would hit as the alarm was finally silenced. Guilt for the lost time. Guilt for the sheer lack of motivation. Guilt for this inexplicable inability to embrace the life that was waiting just beyond the covers. What do you think is the hardest part about starting your day when you're feeling completely drained? Laughter began to feel incredibly distant. Joy was like a forgotten language, a beautiful melody that Alex could no longer even hear, let alone sing. When friends with genuinely kind intentions would ask, "Are you okay?" Alex's reply was always the same, "I'm fine," and they'd flash a practiced, effortless smile. This smile, believe it or not, was the most exhausting performance of all. It consumed every ounce of energy Alex could muster just to appear normal, just to avoid raising alarms, just to somehow fit into the quick, bright, demanding pace of the world outside. The very thought of having to explain the black hole inside, the complete lack of energy, the crippling self-doubt, the pervasive apathy, was simply too much. It felt easier, safer to lie. It felt less burdensome to everyone else, or so Alex believed. Have you ever put on that "I'm fine" mask for others? Why do you think it feels so hard to be truly honest about how we're feeling sometimes? Share your thoughts below. The world just kept moving. It was vibrant and loud, but Alex felt utterly stuck, observing it all through a thick, soundproof glass. They could see the beautiful colors, hear the lively chatter, witness the passion and enthusiasm of others, yet they were fundamentally disconnected, completely apart from it all. They were physically present, yes, but not there in spirit. Hobbies that once brought genuine excitement and fulfillment slowly became monumental chores. That beloved guitar lay dusty in the corner, untouched. The empty canvas remained starkly white, a testament to unstarted creativity. That favorite hiking trail felt miles away, not reachable by physical distance, but by the sheer, crushing effort required to step out the front door. This pervasive isolation wasn't a choice. It was a symptom, a cruel side effect of the illness. The constant feeling of soul-deep exhaustion was truly terrifying. And let me tell you, this wasn't the kind of tiredness that a relaxing weekend nap or a good night's sleep could cure. This was the fatigue of a mind that never ever shut off, perpetually consumed by negative self-talk and a chilling sense of impending failure. You're worthless. Everyone would be better off without you. Why bother trying? These were the internal soundtracks, looping endlessly, drowning out any positive voice, and a glimmer of hope. What kind of internal voices do you sometimes battle with? Simple tasks, the ones we all do without a second thought, became absolutely Herculean feats for Alex. Doing a load of dishes felt like building a skyscraper. Responding to a single text message could take hours of agonizing deliberation, every word weighed, every implication analyzed. The entire thought process became thick, slow, and horribly unreliable. And this, my friends, created a vicious cycle. The inability to perform those simple tasks led directly to increased shame, and that shame, in turn, fueled the desire to withdraw even further. More isolation, deeper depression. It's a cruel trap, isn't it? Alex, like many people, tried to fight it. Of course they did. They tried powering through or thinking positive, exactly as so many well-meaning friends and family members suggested. But here's the critical thing to understand. Depression is not just a mindset. It is a clinical condition, often involving chemical imbalances, a sickness that resides deep within the operating system of the brain. Trying to snap out of it felt like trying to solve a complex mathematical equation while constantly falling asleep, or trying to run a marathon with invisible chains wrapped around your ankles. The harder Alex tried to force happiness, the more alienated and broken they felt when the darkness inevitably returned. The nights offered little sanctuary. Even when Alex managed to fall asleep, it was often plagued by restless thoughts, replaying perceived mistakes from the past, amplifying them, and catastrophizing about every possible negative outcome in the future. Sometimes, yes, sleep offered a pure, deep escape, a blessed temporary oblivion. But it was just that, temporary. The terrifying stillness of the morning always brought the weight back with renewed, crushing force. It was an incredibly lonely place, this constant battle, fought entirely in the silence of their own mind. No one could see the emotional trenches Alex was digging, the psychological defenses that were crumbling, the sheer unimaginable effort it took simply to exist, to function on the most basic level. The fear of being judged, the fear of being seen as weak or dramatic kept the walls high, the mask firmly in place, and the internal struggle fiercely guarded. But even amidst that profound exhaustion, beneath the silence, a fragile, deeply buried part of Alex was clinging to a thread, a part that, despite everything, knew this wasn't how life was supposed to be, a part that was utterly terrified, yes, but not completely irrevocably defeated. And that, my friends, is where our journey with Alex truly begins to turn. Have you ever found yourself at a point where you were clinging to just a tiny thread of hope? What was that thread for you? Let's talk about it in the comments. Your experiences can truly help someone else feel less alone. Alex was stuck in that terrifying, soundproof box of depression, wearing that "I'm fine" mask, just to make it through the day. And honestly, for a long time, it felt like there was no way out. The weight was too heavy. The silence was too loud. But here's the thing about the human spirit. Even when we are at our lowest, even when everything in us feels exhausted and defeated, there is almost always a tiny, buried ember that refuses to go out. And that ember is hope. For Alex, that flicker of light didn't come during a sudden, dramatic moment under a rainbow. It came during a particularly dark, agonizing night. Lying awake, feeling utterly, truly drained. You know that feeling, right? When you're so tired your bones ache, but your mind is running 1,000 miles an hour in circles? Have you ever had a moment of rock-bottom clarity where you felt like you couldn't possibly continue the way you were? If you have, tell me about that turning point in the comments. It's important for others to hear those stories. Anyway, lying there, exhausted and tearful, a tiny, almost inaudible voice whispered to Alex, What if things could be different? It wasn't a sudden, blinding burst of optimism. It wasn't a cure. It was more like a tiny, fragile seed that had just managed to break the surface of the frozen ground. This tiny seed wasn't hope in the sense of, I'm going to be happy tomorrow, but hope in the sense of, I cannot live like this anymore, and perhaps there is another way to simply exist. This moment of sheer desperation became the fertile ground for change. This fragile flicker prompted the most difficult yet crucial first step, and I want to be very clear about this. This step takes unbelievable courage. It takes more guts than most people realize. That step was admitting, first to themselves, a terrifying admission, and then to one single trusted person that help was needed. To finally put the mask down and whisper, I am not okay. Think about that for a second. How hard is it to admit vulnerability, especially when you've spent so long pretending to be strong? It's terrifying because you risk judgment, you risk being misunderstood, you risk being told to just cheer up. But Alex realized that the risk of staying where they were was far greater than the risk of reaching out. That admission was like taking the first excruciating breath after being held underwater for years. Alex reached out to a trusted friend, someone who had always shown genuine, non-judgmental kindness. And here's the key. The friend didn't try to fix Alex. They didn't offer toxic positivity. They simply listened. They validated the pain. They said, thank you for telling me. Let's find some help together. That support, that initial validation was the fuel Alex needed to take the next step, to practical step, seeking professional help. What do you think is the biggest barrier that keeps people from reaching out to a therapist or a doctor? Is it cost, stigma, fear? Let me know. Searching for a mental health professional felt overwhelming. The sheer amount of information, the different types of therapy, the anxiety of making that first phone call. It was almost enough to send Alex straight back under the covers. But they remembered that quiet whisper, I cannot live like this anymore. Alex researched, made a difficult first call, and booked an initial session. Walking into that therapy office for the first time was one of the bravest things Alex had ever done. It felt exposing, it felt awkward, it felt necessary. The journey wasn't linear. Let me stress this. Healing is never a straight line. There were good days where Alex felt a slight lift, a tiny piece of the old self peeking through. And then there were bad days, days where the darkness seemed to crash back in with a vengeance, making Alex question if the whole effort was pointless. These setbacks, these moments of regression, are completely normal. They are part of the process, not a sign of failure. Therapy began to slowly, gently unravel years of tangled thoughts and ingrained negative self-beliefs. The therapist helped Alex understand that depression was an illness, a condition that required treatment, not a personal or moral failing. This distinction was revolutionary. It shifted the narrative from, I am a bad person for feeling this way, to, I am a person who is currently sick and I deserve treatment. Alex started learning how to identify the automatic negative thoughts, those crippling internal soundtracks we talked about in part 1. They began to understand the mechanisms of their own mind, how certain triggers could send them spiraling. This awareness wasn't immediate. It took weeks and months of diligent work, of journaling, of showing up to sessions even when they felt like they had absolutely nothing to say. Do you think awareness alone is enough to change a deeply ingrained habit, or does it take deliberate action too? What's your experience? One of the first exercises Alex's therapist gave them was to practice self-compassion. This was incredibly difficult. When you've spent years criticizing yourself, accepting kindness, even from yourself, feels deeply unnatural. Alex had to learn to speak to themselves the way they would speak to a friend who was struggling. Instead of, "You're lazy for not getting out of bed." The new script was, "You are clearly in a lot of pain right now. What is one small thing you can do to be kind to yourself?" The healing process was about building a toolbox, piece by fragile piece. It wasn't about destroying the depression, but about building up defenses and finding ways to cope with its presence. Alex learned about mindfulness, about taking 5 deep breaths to anchor themselves when anxiety flared. They learned the importance of structure, of setting tiny, achievable goals. Take a shower, drink a glass of water, walk to the mailbox. These were not grand achievements, but they were active resistance against the inertia of depression. The choice to seek help was the single most powerful act of self-love Alex had ever performed. It was the moment they stopped simply surviving and started tentatively, frighteningly, learning how to live again. They realized that reaching out wasn't a sign of weakness, it was the ultimate act of strength. And that's the message I want to leave with you today. If you are carrying that invisible weight, if you are wearing that mask, please know that the first, bravest step is simply whispering, "I am not okay." You are not a failure for needing help. You are a warrior for seeking it. We left off with Alex taking that monumental first step, admitting they weren't okay and starting therapy. And let me tell you, that was a huge win. But here's the reality check, and this is something you all need to hear. Healing isn't a race. It's not like flipping a switch where suddenly all the darkness is gone and you're perfect again. That's a myth, and chasing that myth will only lead to disappointment. Healing is a marathon of small, often frustrating victories. Alex quickly learned that therapy wasn't a magic cure, it was a gym for the mind. You don't get strong just by signing up. You get strong by showing up, doing the reps, and pushing through the pain when you want to quit. Alex started with what the therapist called tiny habits. Have you ever heard of that concept? It's about making a task so small it's impossible to fail. Instead of saying, "I have to exercise for 30 minutes, Alex's goal became, "I will put on my sneakers." That's it. Instead of, "I have to clean the whole apartment," it was, "I will wash 1 fork." These were not grand achievements visible to the outside world, but they were acts of profound resistance against the inertia of depression. They were moments where Alex proved to the negative voice inside that action was still possible. What is one tiny habit you could start today that would improve your mental well-being? Maybe it's just drinking a glass of water or opening the blinds. Drop your tiny habit idea in the comments. Let's inspire each other. The process was slow. Sometimes it was frustrating. There were plenty of days when Alex would manage to do one tiny habit, maybe they took a 5-minute walk, and then the next day, they'd be right back in bed feeling paralyzed. This is where the old shame tried to creep back in, whispering, "See, you failed. You're a fraud. This isn't working." But this time, Alex had a new tool, self-compassion. And this was possibly the hardest lesson. Alex had to learn to speak to themselves the way they would speak to a friend who had relapsed or had a setback. Instead of beating themselves up, Alex started saying, "Okay, that was a tough day, but you still ate a meal yesterday. That counts. You were hurting, and that's okay. Let's try again today, and the goal is just to make the bed." This practice of self-kindness became the foundation for everything else. It allowed Alex to view setbacks not as proof of failure, but as information. What happened? Did you get less sleep? Were you overstimulated? Therapy helped Alex become a curious observer of their own pain, rather than a harsh judge. Alex began to reconnect with the forgotten self. Remember how the guitar was dusty and the canvas was blank? Alex didn't force a 2-hour session. They simply decided to pick up the guitar for 60 seconds or put one brush stroke on the canvas. It wasn't about the output, it was about the re-engagement. Slowly, gently, the world began to regain its color. Alex started noticing the difference in the taste of coffee, the warmth of the sun, the genuine sound of a friend's laugh. These weren't instantaneous, dramatic changes. They were moments of clarity that started happening more frequently. They also learned the immense importance of boundaries and support systems. They had to identify who in their life was genuinely supportive and who was draining or judgmental. They started saying no to things that were overwhelming, protecting their fragile energy like a precious resource. Do you have a healthy support system? Are there people you can truly be honest with without fearing judgment? If not, that is a goal worth fighting for. And if you're still building it, remember, community can be found online, in support groups, or through a good therapist. The depression didn't vanish entirely, and this is the key to understanding long-term healing. The weight didn't disappear, but it became manageable. Alex built emotional and mental muscles to carry it. They learned coping mechanisms, how to challenge the automatic negative thoughts, CBT, how to stay present in the moment instead of spiraling into anxiety, mindfulness, and how to communicate needs honestly. The process of rediscovery was profound. Alex started to realize that the depression wasn't who they were, it was something they had experienced. They were more than their illness. They rediscovered their passions, their strengths, and their unique light. They realized they were resilient, brave, and deeply worthy of love and happiness. It wasn't about returning to the person they were before depression. It was about building a stronger, more compassionate person who had faced hell and come back with wisdom. A person who understood the necessity of rest, the power of vulnerability, and the profound importance of self-care. This journey of healing is continuous. It requires effort every single day. But Alex found that the effort was finally paying off in the most meaningful way. They were present in their own life again. They were breathing deep. They were genuinely smiling. And that leads us to the final part of Alex's story, the part where vulnerability becomes strength, and darkness is transformed into a message of hope for everyone watching.
We've reached the final and, in my opinion, the most important part of Alex's story. We saw the darkness, we saw the agonizing bravery as they whispered, "I'm not okay," and the tireless work of rebuilding in the last section. Now, Alex stands here, not perfectly cured, because life is messy, but powerfully transformed. This phase is about realizing that your vulnerability, the very thing you tried to hide for so long, is actually your greatest strength. It's about taking all that difficult experience, all that pain you went through, and turning it into something incredibly powerful, a beacon for others. Alex's journey is a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity for healing. But it's not just Alex's story anymore. It's a mirror reflecting the possibilities within all of us. When Alex finally looked back, they realized something profound. The darkest days were not a waste. They gave Alex depth, perspective, and an ability to connect with pain in a way that someone who hasn't struggled simply cannot. Have you ever thought about your hardest moments as giving you a unique superpower? The power of empathy? It's true. The struggle gives you the language to reach out to someone else stuck in the silence. This realization led Alex to an important mission: to break the silence. For years, Alex felt utterly alone, trapped in a lie. Now, they understood that millions of people around the world were wearing the exact same "I'm fine" mask. They recognized that the biggest hurdle to healing isn't the depression itself, it's the shame and isolation that surrounds it. Why do we feel so much shame about asking for help? Is it the fear of being seen as weak? Is it the expectation that we should always be hustling or happy? I want you to share your biggest mental health hurdle in the comments. By talking about it, we normalize it, and we help tear down those old, useless stigmas. Alex started opening up, cautiously at first, sharing snippets of the healing journey with trusted circles. And what happened? The response wasn't judgment. It was a flood of "me too." Friends, co-workers, even distant acquaintances started pulling Alex aside, whispering their own struggles with anxiety, grief, or depression. This is the power of shared vulnerability. When one person shines a light on their own struggle, it automatically illuminates the path for dozens of others. Alex discovered that the goal wasn't just to feel better for themselves, but to show others that a path out of the darkness does exist. And this brings us to you, right now, watching this video. If you are struggling, please know this with every fiber of your being: you are not alone. That feeling of unique, terrifying isolation is a lie the depression whispers to you. There are millions who understand exactly how hard it is to get out of bed. There are communities, therapists, doctors, and friends ready to listen without judgment. If someone watching this right now feels completely alone, what is the single most important message you think they need to hear? Let me know in the comments. It could be the lifeline for someone else. Alex's journey taught them that asking for help is not giving up. It is choosing to fight differently. It is an act of self-love, and it is the single most important decision you can make. If you've been thinking about therapy, if you've been ignoring that ache, or if you've been canceling appointments because the fear is too big, let this be your sign. The effort is worth it. The struggle is worth it. You are worth it. Alex's life now isn't perfect. No one's is. There are still challenging days. The old weight sometimes tries to settle back in. But now, Alex has the tools, the resilience, and the self-awareness to manage it. They know how to identify the signs early. They know when to implement those tiny habits. They know who to call for support. The goal isn't to erase the memory of the struggle. It's to integrate it, to recognize that the strength forged in the fire is the most durable kind. Alex now advocates for rest, for boundaries, and for treating mental health with the same respect we treat physical health. You wouldn't judge someone for needing a cast for a broken leg, so why do we judge ourselves for needing help to heal a wounded mind? Alex's story ends with an open invitation. An invitation to choose life, choose help, and choose hope. That fragile seed of hope we talked about in part 2, it's still inside you. It's waiting for you to water it with small acts of kindness towards yourself and the courage to reach out. The journey towards healing can begin today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. It doesn't have to be a grand, dramatic change. It can be as simple as sending one text message that says, "I need to talk," or typing "find a therapist" into your search bar. Take that first frightening step, and then the next, and the next. Your life is precious. Your smile is valuable. And just like Alex, you too can find your way back to the light, transforming your invisible struggle into a story of incredible, undeniable strength. You deserve to feel joy. You deserve to heal. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for helping us break the silence. If Alex's story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe for more conversations like this, and share this video with one person who might need to hear it today.